And what advice would you give other researchers who are about to take their first step on the startup?
Go for it. It's a fascinating journey, and you'll never look back. It's a real career highlight to be able to take something out of your research laboratory and potentially develop something that will benefit patients down the track.
You need to realise that everything doesn't revolve around an individual. The reason we've got as far as we've gotten to is because the work is broadened to involve a number of different people, a number of collaborations, and it involves big teams of people. So you need to be prepared to work with a number of people. It doesn't centre around any one individual. And again, that is a very rewarding process and very sharpening of scientific questions in doing that sort of research.
It would be really great if more researchers were able to talk about the customers that they're serving. Who is that customer? What do they look like? What conversations have they had with those customers? What are the pain points they're solving? And what about their solution directly speaks to that customer's problem and solving that problem? Because if we don't have that, we don't have a sale, and therefore we don't have a business.
Firstly, speak to people who have done it. Learn from them. Learn about their successes, but also about their failures. They are really just an invaluable resource. The second thing that I would say is, that I would advise them to do, is to recognise and fill their gaps. Now, that can be gaps in the research program that might need to be filled before you can actually even get investors interested, in which case, start working now on how you're going to get the resources to fill those gaps. But it can also be gaps in expertise. Now, particularly if this is your first time in a startup, you might be fantastic at the science side of things. So you might be great at putting together the research plan for the company, but you might have absolutely no business know-how. In which case, you want to make sure you fill that gap. Get someone on board who does know what they're doing on the business side of things, and they'll usually bring with them a really valuable network as well. Now, that's somewhere where UniSeed can be really, really beneficial, because they'll not only help you to identify those gaps, but they'll help you to fill them.
I suppose I could answer that by saying, great science, but the science is only one part of it. So that a whole lot of things have to line up, for a new drug development opportunity to sort of get off the ground. There's the science, clearly. There's the IP position. It's having protection around your molecule and the use of it. But it's also the commercial landscape, the commercial opportunity, the unmet clinical need. Will the product fit into clinical practice? Will the physicians prescribe it to their patients? And it's also thinking about, is there a potential acquirer at the other end of the investment process? Once we do invest, will a big pharma partner come along in 3 or 4 years and acquire the program? Well, clearly, someone that's passionate about what they're doing, but also who's prepared to listen, because academics are academics, so they're focused on the science, and it's good to sort of meet someone who's prepared to listen and receive advice from people that know more about the commercial aspect and prepared to be guided and listen to feedback. And we find, when you meet those kind of researchers, it makes the journey a lot more fun for everyone, and it also leads to success as well.
I would definitely say do it. It is an extraordinary opportunity if you can take your research and continue pushing it beyond just the point where you could publish a paper, but get to the stage where it's actually useful to somebody else and is sufficiently interesting or valuable that you can make something larger of a piece of research or of an invention. I think having gone through the process has made me a better scientist, a better researcher, because I've gained a lot of insight from working with industry, with some extremely clever people all over the world that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to even meet as an academic. So broadening my point of view I think was really, really valuable. So I'd definitely encourage any interested researchers to take up the journey.
It's a really interesting question, because to get an impact from your research, you've got to take the next step and get it used in industry or used in anger by people outside of your lab. There's a few different ways you could do that. One of them is to do a startup and go and find investors who can help you create that impact and deliver that value to people. So I see that as an extension of the science process. It's translating the science into impact out in the community. So my advice would be, if a startup is identified as something you could do, or you should do with your invention or your science, then pursuing a startup's a pretty exciting and interesting thing to do. Well, a lot of focus on in the commercial space on delivering value to an end customer. So very, very early on, identifying who that customer is going to be and what's the value that they're going to get from using your invention. And you're going to have to be solving a problem that they've got, and that they value a solution for that problem. It doesn't really matter how you get to that solution. What matters is that you deliver the value of solving it for them.
I'd encourage any researcher to be kind of as open and honest as possible. Like, we're going to have probably 100 different questions. You might be able to only answer 20 of them, for instance. But if you don't know the answer, then simply say that. It's much nicer to see a researcher who can acknowledge where they don't have knowledge or haven't thought about these things, and then go away and take a closer look. Often when they extend the truth and make things up on the spot, you lose that credibility and trust from the first meeting, which is certainly not something which you want to do. So I suppose in that first meeting as well, I'd certainly say try and build that relationship between yourself and an investor, whether it be somebody at UniSeed or somebody like that. It's unlikely that you're going to get investment on that first meeting, but if you can start to establish a rapport and a relationship, hopefully the investor will like you and then continue to work with you to a stage where you might be ready for investment.
Well, academics already have full-time job, more than full-time, but rather than zooming into the science all the time, you now also have to think about how is this going to benefit someone commercially, and so, which is also rewarding at the same time. So if you have that mindset that you want to make a difference directly in this world by basically getting science and technology implemented and deployed in a commercial area, then that's the right thing to do. But if you're happy just to publish the paper and really would like to do a lot more fundamental science and don't like to think too much interdisciplinary, because that's also another trait, you have to be able to think in other areas quite a bit and combine those areas. You have to become a little bit interested in business. But in my case, that makes perfect sense, because I want to make a difference in the world. So the only way to make a difference in this world is, you need to have the product out there.
Talk to people who have been in the system and have had a go at it. I think that would be the advice I'd give you. I think mentorship is vital. You can ignore their advice, but if you don't take it, I think you'd be pretty foolish, I would have thought, because that pool of information is out there now, and most people are quite willing to share it.
We're going to take a different perspective, and we'd never really seen any bad science, so I don't think you need to convince us about the science, but what we're really interested in is the market and the need, and we're going to ask questions that are trying to assess not only that, but also understand you as a person. And you've got to remember, when we're meeting you and when investors are meeting you, they're judging you, not just the technology, and trying to say, well, can I work with this person? So listen and be open.
Look, I would, dream big. You can't be afraid of, saying, well, I have this idea. I don't know what to do with this idea. I mean, there's so many support structures, programs, incubators, accelerators, funds, UniSeed, all those there's so much resources now for researchers to dream big, but then do something about that dream. And they've got to think, well, I'm doing research, but why am I doing it? What's the application? What's the potential? What problem am I trying to solve with what I'm doing? And the advice that I would get, say, well, make that problem a real world problem. Explore, if that problem is a significant problem and there's a commercial opportunity behind it. If you don't know how to answer that question of is there a commercial opportunity behind it, that's where these other resources within the university ecosystem are there to help you do that. And I think more people we can get thinking that mindset, the more people that will say, okay, well, there's actually application for what I'm doing, and we could look at pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and being practical about where we see this research going, providing real world solutions to problems and trying to change the world that way.